That is confusing. I often say when you have patients in front of you that we see all the time, the patients are super frustrated because they've talked to providers, and I don't think any provider ever wants to not understand what's going on. It's super frustrating when you don't. But if you're faced with a group of patients like we have all the time, pretty rare that you're going to know exactly what's going on, like all the time. So you got to wrap your head around that, and that can be a challenge. Then you have to be like super, like you are used to listening, and then you'll be like, ah, yeah, that makes sense. So now it's the opposite. Like instead of listening for clues, you have to listen to what's not being said.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the other thing that's obviously leads to so much problems is people feeling like there's gaslighting or other things that have happened in the medical community where they're not being believed or understood. And I think one of the other things, and I imagine you see this in a lot of your work too, which is that diagnostic state label being the endpoint for people. And I think so many times people get like the fibromyalgia diagnosis, the migraine diagnosis, the chronic fatigue, all these types of diagnoses, whether they're a conglomeration of symptoms like a syndrome or a true diagnostic. And it's like the endpoints, right? Versus like that listening is to actually go back and say, okay, well, what is like the diagnostics and should in many ways, like the label we give should in many ways be like that beginning point. So when we're listening and it's say somebody that you have in your clinic and all of a sudden it's like we're talking about, wow, this doesn't make sense. That's what you're listening for, is like, does this make sense? Does this not? Is there a clear path to, oh yeah, I got this implant, or I did this thing, or I had this trauma, and we can see the path? Or it just seemed like everything got muddled and tangled. And when everything is muddled and it doesn't seem clear, that is usually when one of these chronic inflammatory things does come into play.
Yeah, it happened to me when I was interviewing a patient who didn't have breast implants. And they were just talking and wanted some advice about their body contouring and a no-cut facelift, which we do, and all these different things. But something just didn't add up. Stuff they kept saying, and they were hopping from practitioner to practitioner and trying protocol after protocol. And finally I was like, any chance you ever lived in a house with mold or home with mold or worked in a place with mold or you got a tick bite? And it just occurred to me like the interview had went on so long that I'd lost the plot. Like they were telling me what was wrong, and I really wasn't catching on because it wasn't my traditional breast implant patient. But this is the person who has the same quote unquote genetic predisposition. They've now got exposed to or never got cleared of mold and or Lyme. And then whatever happened, stress, trauma, event, X, eating bad food, breathing bad air, drinking bad fluids, has really turned on, to your point, their immune system. And now everything is going haywire.